Welcome to Life is Brutal. I'm Anthony. I have been wanting to make this video for years now. I just didn't think anybody would care about it at all. But lo and behold, to my surprise, I logged into my YouTube account one day and I saw a comment from Thomas Haidt Vogel 4467 where he asks if I would talk through some of the books that helped slash entertained slash taught me, and I'm presuming he's talking about beer. So I get to talk about my beer library finally. So Thomas, huge thank you for that. You really, really made me happy because I finally have an excuse to do this. You know, even if just one other person is interested in this, then it's worth making it to me. The reason why I like this topic so much is because I pride myself in being something that I've heard called a lifelong learner. I enjoy learning about things. I enjoy reading deep dives, huge researches into a particular topic. And it's even in the beer world, it's gotten kind of broad, and you will see that in my beer collection here. But you can get as wide, as deep, as narrow, and shallow as you want when it comes to building your own beer library and choosing which books are of interest to you. So without further ado, let's get into it. I wouldn't necessarily say I have the densest beer library, but I would say that my collection of books covers a wide range of different beer topics, ranging from cookbooks to historical books, beer style specific books, and even beer brand or weird moments in beer history, significant event designated, dedicated books. So nothing too crazy, but there are some that I think are more important than others. I think the three most critical books that are the foundational tomes for any beer library, anybody who ever wants to learn anything about beer, needs to look at these three books first. So the beer book I want to start off with was actually the very first beer book I ever purchased, which is The Complete Joys of Homebrewing by Charlie Papazian. I picked up this version, third edition, back in like 2013, 14-ish. I wanted to start brewing my own beer, and I had been drinking a little craft beer, and I was kind of getting into it, but I did not know anything about it. I didn't know about beer styles. I didn't know about brewing processes, techniques, ingredients even. I knew nothing. So I picked this book up and I started reading it while I was taking like my lunch breaks at work, and spending most of my nights just reading through it. I think I read through it maybe 3 or 4 times, just back to back to back. It was incredibly important for building my foundational beer knowledge, because it talks about ingredients, it talks about beer styles, it talks about different equipment, techniques, processes, all the different critical elements required of drinking, brewing, understanding beer. Like, anybody can go pick up any random beer and they can drink it and they can, oh, I don't like it, I do like it, oh, this is too bitter, whatever. You know, they can pick out those attributes and characteristics, but they're not going to understand why it is the way it is without having that foundational knowledge that this book provides. Having that knowledge in the back of your brain is incredibly important. I really recommend just picking this book up, any of the newer editions, obviously, and going and grabbing some of your favorite beers and going through, reading this book and figuring out why your beer is the way it is. I mean, it's incredibly important for talking about beer, is knowing what you're talking about, and you can't talk about it if you don't know about it. So this is the book to do that. So moving on to the big boy, we're going to be talking about the Oxford Companion to Beer. The Oxford Companion to Beer is a part of Oxford College's companion series. They have it for wine, spirits, cocktails, so many different things, even outside of the world of alcohol, if I'm not mistaken. But the point is, this is, it's essentially a dictionary, okay? You can crack this bad boy open and you are going to find so much about different ingredients. You're going to learn about processes, techniques, all that normal stuff. You're also going to learn about beer styles. You're going to learn about famous brewers. Anything and everything you ever want to know about beer, you can crack this bad boy open in alphabetical order, find whatever it is, and learn a surface level dictionary amount of information about that topic. Now, with all that said, I will say that I do view this book as being the least important of the three. It is incredibly practical and it is a great source of information, but it's not necessarily a good read because it's a dictionary. But another reason I do say it is the least important is because it's also the most expensive. This bad boy is coming in at around $65 for the physical copy. At least that's how much I paid for it a couple years back. I do think there is now a digital version, but that's still $45. Very, very expensive. But if you were going to buy this book, I would recommend you buy the digital version since it would be easier to utilize with the search function instead of flipping through all the pages and everything. It would just be better to have it on digits than the physical copy. But still, I am very, very happy I own this book and it has come in handy so many times. All right, so the last book in the foundational tome series is the legendary World Guide to Beer by Mr. Michael Jackson, the famed beer author and historian. This book is like the grandfather of all beer books. This was arguably one of the most important beer books ever written, ever. Michael Jackson was the first one to really codify and standardize the modern day concept of beer styles, and he did so in this book. So when you look at historic references to different beer styles and things of that nature, they're often talking about the location. Like this is the Bamberger style, as in this is the beers that are brewed in Bamberg. This is the Berliner Weiss, the type of beers brewed in Berlin. You know, they're different because they're from different locations. Well, Mr. Michael Jackson, he started going through all these different places around the world, but primarily in Europe is what you'll find in this book. And he went to these places and he was like, oh, I see trends. I see patterns that between regions and the type of beers they're outputting. Maybe this is a Berliner white beer as opposed to the Berliner brown beer. Oh, why are these two different? Why, he's defining the differences between all the different beer styles and what made them unique, what made them special. He really helped build that bridge between historical and traditional brewing practices to our modern day understanding of beer styles. So much of the modern day beer scene has been built off of this book in particular. There's been so many countless other beer style books built off of the work he laid down here. There's the BJCP, the American Brewers Association Beer Style Guidelines. If you read this book written like 20, 30 years before the modern day, you will see that there is a lot of similarities. He was the one who put in the groundwork. And still to this day, I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a random bar, brewery, tap room, whatever, across the European continent, and I'll see a picture of Michael Jackson hanging on the wall. And I'm like, what is this about? Why do y'all have a picture of Michael Jackson? They're like, well, he came in here, he drank one of our beers, he wrote about it in the book. Incredibly important. I cannot recommend this book enough if you are interested in beer styles, traditional brewing techniques, and just the history of beer styles. So this is a great beer style book. Okay, so to bring this first portion of the video to a close, these are the three most important beer books I think anyone could ever own, read, enjoy, learn from. Anything you could ever possibly want to know about beer is mentioned somewhere in these three books. In fact, I swear every single time I do any video on my channel, whether it be a beer style history, a home brewing video, a cooking video, beer glassware, whatever, I crack open one or more of these books. These are my first step in doing my research. So if you are interested in learning more about beer, I highly recommend you seek out these books. So moving away from the foundational beer books that I think everyone should have, I think we should cast our net a little bit wider, but also a little bit deeper simultaneously. I do recommend you pick up what I call the institutionalized series of books. There's two series that are currently being published or republished from the Brewers Association of America. Some of them are very, very specific in the beer styles they cover, which they talk about not only style characteristics, but they talk about the history of the style. They talk about its origins, how it's changed over the years. And I always find these books incredibly important when I'm doing my research. There does seem to be a little bit of outdated information, and I do think that this series in particular is in a desperate need for a revamp, a new edition to come out. But with that said, there's still so many great offerings, so many different beer styles that people should know about if they want to be able to speak intelligently about beer and brewing. You know, like, what's the difference between a Kolsch and an alt beer? You know, why do they have different glasses? I made videos on this, and I bought these books for those videos. Very incredibly important, great books. I will say, oh man, so some of them are getting a little bit rarer to find, and it's because they are older, they are a little bit more outdated, and they're not being published and released as much. In particular, the Lambic is the hardest one of these books to find. The rest of these books are maybe like $15 to $20 depending on, you know, where you're ordering it and what time of the year you're getting it. I had to special order this one and it was around $65. And because I know it's like so hard to find and so difficult to get your hands on, I refuse to open it up because this is an original sealed copy. So I really wish I knew what was inside of it though. I really like lambic beer. I just don't want to have to buy a whole second copy just to open it up and read it. Oh. The other series that they are publishing is a bit broader, a bit of a wider net, some more vaguer topics such as farmhouse ales or brew like a monk. And they get some pretty significant authors going on like Stan Hieronymus and Phil Murkowski, famed beer authors and journalists that are, you know, well renowned for their work in recording beer outside of these books, you know. So some pretty significant beer authors going putting in a lot of work into this and a ton of great information. If you want to know anything about farmhouse ales, great book. It talks about Beer de Garde, it talks about saison, I mean everything. Brew like a monk, all the different Trappist beers, all videos that I've made were built off of these, you know. So incredibly important books all around. I do have my qualms with the Brewers Association. There's some things they do that I don't necessarily like or enjoy, but one thing I can't deny them is that they have a pretty good book series. I just wish it would have newer editions with updated information. Travel books. I am a huge traveler. I try to travel as often as I can, whether it's just like a weekend getaway to, you know, like figuring out how to survive a week in San Diego without a hotel, things like that. You know, I absolutely love it. And I always like to go wherever I'm at. I like to eat the local food and I like to drink the local beer. And there's amazing books out there that tell not only the history of the specific location you're going to, but all the best beers and their history and like where you should go, the best establishments. I can't tell you how many times I utilized this book when I was traveling through Bavaria, The Beer Drinker's Guide to Munich. I mean, just like it helps you build an itinerary to make sure you don't miss out on any of the best things. If I know I'm going to go somewhere, I like to get one of these books like a week or two in advance, and I like to go through, read as much about them as I can, and that's how I map out where I want to go. It builds my itinerary, and if I'm going to make a video out of it, I already have a great start on my research. Most recently, I did buy the San Diego one, and I mean, it was so incredibly important. And I have a couple videos coming out here soon where you'll see me traveling through Finland, Lithuania, places like that. And I've got the book with me the whole time, and I'm like, this is the spot. And I go in and I find the like rare beer style or the unique beer brand that I'm looking for. Incredibly useful, incredibly helpful. So if you are a traveler and a beer drinker simultaneously, I do recommend you get one of these. It does make you look like a dumb tourist. It does, you know, it's extra packing and things like that. But in my experience, not only have they been helpful, but when you go into a place and you're like, I'm looking for the insert whatever. People are like, oh, interesting. You have a book on this? Oh, and like people will be like, what does it say about my brewery? And they'll like, it's pretty interesting how people react to it. And yeah, you might look a little dorky, but I mean, it has been, in my experience, the best way to get the best beer experiences possible. So, highly, highly, highly recommend you get beer destination travel books if you are a traveler. I just want to tell you about my 3 favorite books in my library. I would say A Beer History, A Day at a Time Through the Year. It's an interesting little book where it cracks open every single day of a year, right? So 365 days, and it talks about a significant beer event that happened on each one of those days. So incredibly weird way to read and learn about beer history, but I treat it more like a fact guide. And one day I hope I can sit there and I can read one excerpt a day for a year. I might do that in 2025. We'll see what happens. Okay, so this book is incredibly weird but so insanely interesting to me. It's called The Barbarian's Beverage: A History of Beer in Ancient Europe. Now, like I said, I'm a huge history buff. I love talking about history, and I really love learning about different cultures and societies. And I think my favorite historical culture was the Celtic people, whether that be the Gauls, the Belgae, the Galatians, whatever. And I just find them infinitely fascinating. So this book is pretty much a complete history coming from Greek and Roman sources, as well as modern archaeological explorations and discoveries, where they go through and they break down every single one of the many, many, many Celtic tribes ranging across thousands of years, and they talk about their influence or their impact on beer, or what their traditions with beer were. I used this a whole lot when I was going through the Iberian Peninsula. I was like, what was beer in Andorra? What was beer in Portugal? Why is the Spanish beer scene the way it is today? And so many fascinating things can be gleaned from this. So if you are a huge history buff, if you're really into ancient European cultures, specifically the Celts, this is a fascinating read. It is a collegiate paper. I'm pretty sure this is a thesis that actually just got kind of bound together and sold on Amazon as a book. But I do really recommend giving this a read. This is so fascinating, and this will be a key component in a video I plan on doing in the near future. I'm going to need some time to get down and work through that one. So stay tuned for a Barbarian's Beverage video. I want to talk about my absolute favorite beer book that I've ever read. I'm not joking. I've read through this book at least 20, 30 times. I really enjoy this book, and I utilize it so often in my videos. This is Historic German and Austrian Beers for the Home Brewer. This was written by Andreas Krenmer. He is a Austrian author, and I would consider him to be a historian, currently living in Berlin. I actually did an interview with him. Incredibly personable guy, great author, very captivating. But this book talks about so many ancient beers that have faded away from existence, and he did a lot of work digging into all the first origin sources to be able to piece together beer styles that would have been forgotten to time. I mean, I can't explain how important this book is in general to beer history, but more importantly, it's so dang interesting to me specifically. I love this book. I have both a physical copy and a digital copy. And one time I couldn't find this book, so I bought a second copy of it just because I could not have my library go without it. I just love this book so freaking much. I highly recommend you pick up this book if you're interested in beer styles, beer history, German and Austrian brewing techniques, traditional practices, and the such. I do recommend you look at some of Andreas Krenmar's other books. He has one solely dedicated on Vienna Lager and another one that is for home brewing, but it's only in German. So I've actually been trying to learn German so I can read that book. In conclusion, I really enjoy reading beer books, and I firmly believe that if you want to learn more about beer, there's no better option than books. Almost anything you could ever want to know about beer has likely been captured in one book or another. You just got to get out there and find them. And if you don't want to deal with the clutter of a physical library, there's so many digital options from Kindle to Google, and all of those massive libraries are constantly growing every single day. So there's no excuse not to have a good beer book. I find myself taking them with me everywhere I go, and I genuinely love snuggling up in bed, cracking open a nice beer, and thumbing through a great beer book. So hopefully this video inspires similar feelings in y'all and hopefully provides some good recommendations. Thank you for watching. Remember, there's a story in every bottle and that life is beautiful. Cheers.